Motorsports. You're listening to 1680 AM on your internet dial. This evening we have a guest with us, Don Prieto. Don, thanks for being with us here this evening. I just wanted to kind of touch bases on what we discussed briefly on the way over here was something to do with the publishing business. You were talking about some of the magazines and it's kind of why don't you bring us up to date on what's going on out there?
Do what I can. I'm glad to be here, first of all.
Well, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate you coming.
The status of the magazine business and publishing in general is on the descent.
Oh, boy.
The cost of paper, the cost of mailing, the lack of advertisers, the general turn down has caused great aches and pains among the particularly the car books. Car and Driver and Road and Track, part of the Hachette family, which is a French company, recently got sold to the owner of Popular Mechanics, Hearst Corporation, which I think you're familiar with.
Go, Don.
Well, the electronic media is going to rule the world, if it doesn't already. And that's going to supplant anything that you can hold in your hand, with the possible exception of hardcover books, which will be published because they last so long and they become a permanent record. The business of getting information about your hobby or your business or your personal life or your health or any of that stuff is all going to come electronically. I used to read 30, 40 magazines a month. And now I think I read 2, and that's because they still send them to me.
Now that's funny.
Everything else I get pretty much on the. I'm connected with a couple of chat rooms that I get the information about what I'm interested in, which is drag racing and automobiles and hot rods and stuff like that. Right straight from the horse's mouth, the guys that are out there doing it.
Well, we had some conversation on the way here, and I was curious. I recall some in the past about how this hot rod reunion thing got started, and I heard all conflicting stories, of course. I'd like you shed some light on kind of a little bit about that, how we got going on this deal.
Well, I was kind of there in that it all originated at a restaurant after Joe Paisano's funeral. Joe Paisano was one of the pioneers in racing, and he ended up owning Vinolia Pistons.
Yeah, I know. With he, Nick, and Bob Torres were all partners in the deal, and somehow I think that they had an election unbeknownst to Nick, and he's no longer with the club.
They elected him out.
Yeah,
sent him down the road.
Yeah,
that's a whole nother story.
We won't go there today, but
Joe had a heart attack at the Nationals and died in front of 125,000 people. And so it was well publicized that he was gone. And so they had this funeral in Fox Hills. And everybody turned out. I mean, the place was packed. And about 20 of us ended up going to a restaurant over on Sepulveda Boulevard. One of them being Steve Gibbs, who was the director of competition at the National Hot Rod Association.
NHRA, yeah, right.
And he's looking around at the guys that he sees and all the people that he just saw for the first time in 15 years, and he says, there ought to be a way to have one of these gatherings without having to have somebody die. And that was the kernel from which the California Hot Rod reunion tree grew.
Yeah.
And they were going to do it once. They said, let's try it and see what happens.
One time, yeah, right.
And let's do it in Bakersfield, and because that's where field drag racing really took hold, while everybody else was over aggravating about gasoline and safety and all of that stuff. Bakersfield was a racer's race.
Who was running that place at the time? Do you recall?
Yeah, the Smokers were running it at that point.
Yeah. That's right.
And they were still running. Well, let me see. 20 years ago, yeah, Jack Williams.
Jack Williams is what I was trying to remember.
Was connected, and he was a smoker. But I think they had sold the smoker name and the U.S. Fuel and Gas Championship name to Gil Cohen, and he took it back east.
That's correct.
So Jack was running it for what was the result of NDRA, which was a Nostalgia Drag Racing Association, started by Tom Proofer and Brian Burnett. Brian Burnett was the son of the guy who drew all the cutaways in the early hot rod magazines. And Tom Proofer was a drag racer who Bob Smith, Jet Car Bob, drove for a while.
Jet Car
people
Bob,
like that. And in 1988, they threw together an event at Fremont, which was essentially the first nostalgia event. And Chrisman dusted off the Hustler, and Proofer had a car that he had been running, and the Champion Speed Shop guys still had their car hanging on the wall.
I think Gatelli, wasn't he involved with that deal?
I think so.
Yeah.
Anyway, they gathered at Fremont, and they had a very successful event. And it was run whatever you happen to have in the garage. Well, the rule makers got into the picture, and over years it kind of deteriorated into just a few people spending a lot of money to win nothing much at all.
That's pretty much the standard in our sport, isn't it?
Yeah, and along came this reunion, and it kind of brought cars that participated in that early event, plus some other stuff that had been uncovered that was laying in the garage and what have you, like Doug Robinson's Mr. Horsepower car. When he quit running it, he put it in the corner and covered it, and that was it. So those kinds of cars came out of the woodwork for the first reunion. And Bill Pitts, who was a spectator during the era when you and I were out there racing, he chased around and found the Bainey Prudhome's Shelby Super Snake car, and he was determined to do a 60s style drag racer to run at these kinds of events. And he knew he couldn't afford a Ford motor, so he traded the car for the Magic car, which had a Chrysler in it, there were more affordable parts for the Chrysler.
Yeah, you could go to the junkyard and get one.
Exactly. So he's kind of the father of this cackle madness that we're all participating in now. Well,